The first blow sounded like thunder ripping through the trees. At sunrise, my buddy's bulldozer punched straight through the pristine HOA pavilion, sitting in the middle of my land splinters, brick dust, and a flying members-only sign raining across the clearing. Before the dust even settled, a line of luxury SUVs screeched to a stop, and out stormed Linda Harrington, the HOA president, who acted like she personally owned half of Colorado, screaming that I was destroying community property. The sheriff arrived seconds later. One look at my deed, and Linda's face drained white. And what he said next didn't just flip the situation, it exposed a secret the HOA never expected me to uncover. Linda Harrington wasn't just an HOA president, she was the self-appointed monarch of Cottonwood Ridge. The kind of woman who spoke in smiles but fined in threats, who believed property values rose every time she yelled at someone. Her beige blazers were stiff, her rules were stricter, and her need for control was legendary. People didn't say no to Linda. They just paid the fine and hoped she'd move on. But she wasn't ready for someone who actually read the deed. I inherited the land from my Uncle Jack, a quiet, stubborn man who preferred trees over people and never cared for HOA nonsense. When he passed, I became the owner of 18 untouched acres on the edge of Cottonwood Ridge, a place I saw as my escape from Denver burnout, not the start of a territorial war. I'm a civil engineer by trade, the kind of person who double-checks survey lines and reads zoning codes the way other people read menus. I planned to build a barn, maybe a small rental cabin, nothing dramatic. What I didn't know was that the HOA had been eyeing my uncle's land for years, and they weren't used to anyone telling them no. The first real hint that something was wrong came the morning I drove out to walk the land with a thermos of coffee and a head full of plans. I expected trees, maybe deer tracks, maybe the old tire swing Uncle Jack left hanging somewhere. What I didn't expect was a manicured clearing with a pavilion so polished it looked like a lifestyle magazine cover had wandered into the woods and set up camp. Built-in grill, fresh mulch, brick columns, flower beds shaped like someone traced Google Maps icons. And right at the front, like a cherry on top of arrogance, stood a heavy wooden sign, Cottonwood Ridge Community, Pavilion members only. I stood there blinking, trying to process how an HOA amenity ended up on land that legally belonged to me. And that's exactly when the engineer in me kicked in. I pulled up the county GIS map on my phone, something I've done on more job sites than I can count, and waited for the satellite image to load. When it did, my stomach tightened. The pavilion wasn't on the line. It wasn't near the line. It was inside my boundary. So far inside that you'd have to squint real hard or be deliberately dishonest not to see it. I took screenshots from every angle marked coordinates, then did the one thing I already regretted. Even before I hit call, I phoned the HOA office. A cheerful voice answered on the second ring. "This is Cottonwood Ridge Association, this is Linda speaking." Of course it was. I introduced myself, explained who I was, explained that the pavilion seemed to be located, well, on my property. Her tone shifted instantly, like flipping from a friendly neighbor to a kindergarten teacher scolding a child. "Oh, that pavilion. We've used that space for years. Your uncle allowed it." He was very supportive of our community. Supportive Uncle Jack, the same man who once threatened to chase a census taker with a rake. Still, I asked for documentation. Anything that showed permission. "Sure," she said. Then she emailed me a scanned postcard. A generic beach photo front. Inside, handwritten, "Thanks for keeping the pavilion tidy. Much appreciated." No date, no signature, no return address, not even Uncle Jack's handwriting. "That's our implied consent," Linda chirped when I called her back. I hung up before I said something that started with implied and ended with bull. By the next morning, I was sitting in attorney Mark Feldman's office, the only man in Colorado who drinks more burnt coffee than I do. He studied the deed, the GIS screenshots, and the ridiculous postcard. Mark raised an eyebrow. "They built this without a permit. No easement. No lease, no temporary license, nothing. It's trespassing with extra steps." 10 minutes later, a cease and desist letter was drafted and sent. 10 business days. Remove the pavilion, restore the land, fix all damage. I left his office with a rare feeling confidence. It lasted almost 3 whole days. Because on day 3, the retaliation began. The voicemail came at 6:12 a.m. from the County Environmental Compliance Office. Someone had reported an open, unsecured well on my land, a hazard to wildlife and public safety. I drove out there half expecting to find a sinkhole to hell. Instead, I found the one well on the property, sealed, capped, locked, and safer than most playgrounds. Day 4 brought a letter from zoning enforcement about improper waste storage. Apparently, trash bags had been left near the tree line. Trash I hadn't put there. Trash that suspiciously included fast food wrappers from restaurants nowhere near my property. Day 5, another complaint. Unauthorized deforestation. which was hilarious since the only thing I'd trimmed was poison ivy. Meanwhile, the HOA had cleared an entire acre to build their woodland spa day pavilion. It wasn't random, it wasn't sloppy, it was coordinated. Someone inside the county system was helping them. They were trying to bury me in violations until fighting back became more trouble than giving in. They underestimated two things. I had money. I had spite. So I hired an independent environmental firm from outside the county. No buddies, no favors, no HOA lunches. They spent 2 days combing through the land. The report was 70 pages of scientific revenge. No open wells. No illegal dumping. No fire hazards. No deforestation. 0 violations. I highlighted choice quotes and sent the entire document to a land use columnist at the local paper. A week later, a front-page article ran, "HOA weaponizes county complaint system against new landowner." That must have rattled someone because 2 days later I came home to find a manila envelope duct taped to my gate. No name, no return address. Inside was a USB stick and a single sheet of paper. Watch this. Don't trust the maps. I took it to an old offline laptop, call me paranoid, but paranoia had started to feel like common sense and opened the files. The first video was a screen recording of the GIS system 2 years ago. Straight parcel lines, clean boundaries. Then the video switched to the current map. The southern boundary, my southern boundary now, curved inward perfectly, hugging the pavilion footprint like a protective hand. The second file was a photo of an email header visible: County GIS Department, subject quiet boundary adjustment, Cottonwood Ridge, south body, proceed as discussed. Keep documentation internal. My palms went cold. They hadn't just lied. They hadn't just trespassed. They'd altered official county parcel maps to make their trespass look legal. Someone had committed fraud for an HOA picnic shelter. I sent everything to Mark. He brought in a retired county assessor, a guy who'd spent 30 years watching bureaucrats try to cover their tracks. One look at the timestamps, and he nodded slowly. "Boundary creep," he said. "Classic. Someone inside changed the line about 16 months ago, before your uncle died." Meaning this wasn't reactionary. It was premeditated. They thought no one would check, no one would inherit, no one would fight. They were wrong. The HOA held a community meeting soon after, complete with flyers accusing me of threatening shared spaces and endangering recreational traditions. So I went. Front row. Linda stepped out like she was unveiling a new iPhone. Her slideshow was a parade of staged BBQ photos, kids with lemonade stands, and sunset yoga sessions, none of which Uncle Jack would have tolerated within 100 yards. Then she displayed the updated GIS map, the one with the curved boundary, and announced, "As you can see, the pavilion is clearly within our buffer zone." Murmured approval swept the room. Until I stood, I raised a foam board, displaying my uncle's original survey map, right next to the new GIS screenshot. Straight line versus a curved line. Black and white reality versus digital forgery. Then I spoke just loud enough. "You didn't build inside your buffer zone. You moved the buffer zone." Phones came out. Whispers spread. Someone gasped. Linda tried to shut me down, but the seed was planted. Her empire had cracked, and I wasn't done pushing. The morning I finally stopped playing defense didn't feel dramatic at all. No lightning bolt, no revelation, just me at my kitchen table, flipping through the Colorado property code with a cup of reheated coffee and the kind of quiet fury that sharpens a man's vision. There it was. Paragraph 7, subsection C. A landowner may remove any unpermitted structure erected on private property, provided no easement, lease, or written authorization exists. No easement, no lease, no authorization. Not even a scrap of legal paper pretending to be one. The pavilion was illegal from the moment the first bag of concrete hit the ground. I sent a message to Travis, "It's time." 2 days later, just after sunrise, the clearing glowed gold and orange as his dozer rumbled into place like a prehistoric beast waking up hungry. And that's where the hook happened, where the pavilion turned into rubble and Linda's luxury parade stormed in screaming. But what happened after the sheriff told her I was within my rights? That's when everything really detonated. Because Linda didn't retreat, she regrouped. 2 weeks later, a thick envelope landed on my porch, so heavy it could have doubled as a free weight. I opened it and felt my eyebrows climb halfway up my forehead. The Cottonwood Ridge Community Association was suing me for destruction of communal property, trespass against HOA interest, intentional emotional distress to residents, and my personal favorite, creating a psychologically traumatic clearing. Apparently some neighborhood child cried every time they drove past my gate. Cute. I took everything straight to Mark Feldman. He didn't blink. He didn't laugh. He just leaned back, tapped his pen twice, and said, "Good. They overplayed their hand. Time to go nuclear." The counterclaim we filed the next morning was a legal sledgehammer, unauthorized construction on private land, fraudulent alteration of county GIS records, environmental harassment, abuse of municipal authority, defamation, injunction against further interference, formal request for a criminal investigation into the boundary tampering. We subpoenaed the GIS tech Dylan Price. We attached every screenshot. We attached the internal email. We attached the whistleblower photos. We attached expert testimony. And then we waited. The courthouse was packed. The day of the hearing word travels fast when HOA drama reaches the possible felony stage. Residents filled the benches like they were waiting for the season finale of their favorite TV show. Linda strutted in wearing a navy power suit, her lips pressed thin enough to slice paper. Her attorney, a silver-tongued showman named Delmar Voss, opened with a speech about protecting shared values and the sanctity of community property. He tried to paint me as some rogue developer tearing down beloved gathering spaces for profit. Then Mark stood. If Delmar was a firework, Mark was an earthquake, slow, steady, unstoppable. He started with the deed, then the original survey, then the GIS overlays, then the cease and desist letter, then the independent environmental report, then the video of the boundary shifting straight line dissolving into a curve like someone dragged a drunk mouse across the screen. Objection. Overruled. Objection. Overruled. The room got quieter with every page he turned. Then came the main event. Your Honor, the defense calls Dylan Price. Dylan looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. His hands shook as he was sworn in. When Mark asked whether he altered the boundary, Dylan hesitated, one heartbeat too, then nodded. Yes, I updated the GIS line. And why did you do that? Dylan exhaled sharply, shoulders slumping. Because I was told to. By a county councilman. On behalf of Mrs. Harrington. She said the pavilion was a community oversight that needed correcting. I was told not to log the request publicly. They paid me through a consultant fee so it wouldn't flag. Silence. Dead, absolute silence. Even the bailiff blinked. Mark wasn't finished. He called an expert witness, a retired city planner, who testified that the boundary modification was illegal, unrecorded, and a direct violation of state property procedures. He estimated the pavilion's construction had caused drainage issues that would cost at least $15,000 to fix. Then, the twist I hadn't expected. A tall man in a faded khaki jacket slowly rose from the HOA section. I'd like to make a statement. It was Robert Hines, longtime board member, known for being quiet, polite, invisible. The judge allowed it. Robert cleared his throat, voice shaking but loud enough for everyone to hear. Mrs. Harrington shut down anyone who questioned the pavilion. She threatened board members with removal. She altered meeting minutes. She told us the land would be ours soon and that no one would ever challenge her. I'm done staying quiet. Linda's face went ghost white, and that's when I knew the empire had finally officially collapsed. The judge didn't waste time. After Robert stepped down, after Dylan stared at his shoes like they might swallow him, and after Linda stopped blinking long enough to realize her attorney was no longer making eye contact, the courtroom shifted. It was the kind of shift you can feel like pressure dropping before a storm breaks. When the judge finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of something final. The court finds in favor of the defendant, Mr. Ethan Cole. Linda stiffened. The HOA's claims are dismissed with prejudice. Her jaw tightened. The pavilion is confirmed to have been built illegally on private property. Shoulders sagged across the HOA section. The plaintiff's actions, specifically the alteration of county records, are being referred to the district attorney for review. And that's when Linda's face broke. Not dramatically, not loudly, just a small twitch at the corner of her eye like reality had finally tapped her on the shoulder. The HOA was ordered to pay me $100 0 inches damages, the full cost of demolition, land restoration, attorney fees, and the publication of a formal admission of wrongdoing in the Cottonwood Ridge newsletter. Mark placed a gentle hand on my shoulder like a proud dad watching his kid win a science fair. Let's go home, he said. On the way out, residents parted like I was radioactive. Some glared, some avoided eye contact. A few gave tiny guilty nods, the kind that say, "We knew something was off. We just hoped it wasn't." Linda stayed seated long after the room cleared. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt done. Fully, completely done. And maybe for the first time since I inherited the land at peace. Word spread through Cottonwood Ridge faster than free Wi-Fi. The HOA Facebook group went into meltdown mode by nightfall. Posts disappeared. Comments were locked. 3 moderators resigned in 1 hour. A long, rambling post went up from someone named Tommy. This is a coordinated attack on our community by outside forces. It had 14 angry reacts and one laughing emoji. The laughing emoji was from Robert. An emergency board email hit inboxes the next morning. President Linda Harrington has taken a temporary leave of absence as the board conducts a full internal review, which is HOA speak for. We tossed her under the bus and the wheels have already rolled twice. Then the news hit. Someone leaked Dylan's testimony. The Austin Register ran a follow-up piece titled "Whistleblower Reveals HOA Ties to Quiet GIS Boundary Scheme." Within days, 7 landowners in Travis and neighboring counties requested audits of their parcels. 2 discovered boundary adjustments suspiciously similar to mine. Suddenly, the county office couldn't ignore it. They opened a formal investigation into the GIS department. Whispers of ethics violations and misuse of public authority started circulating. And Linda, rumor had it, she hired a criminal defense attorney before the weekend ended. Robert called me about a week later. "I think I owe you a cup of coffee," he said. We met at a diner that smelled like syrup and burnt toast, the kind of place that makes conversations feel safe. Robert looked tired. Not defeated, just tired in a soul-deep way. She ran everything he said, stirring his coffee without drinking it. If you disagreed, you got fined. If you questioned her, she rewrote minutes to make you look unreasonable. People were scared of losing their standing. He took a breath. "I'm sorry you had to be the one who stopped her, but I'm glad someone finally did." I didn't say much, just nodded. Because sometimes, the simplest acknowledgement can mean more than a victory speech. 2 weeks later, I received a certified letter from the county recorder's office. Inside was an official notice: boundaries reinstated to original parcel map annotation. Previous unauthorized GIS modification corrected for accuracy. They even included a formal apology, short, bureaucratic, but real. The next morning I walked the southern boundary line. Sunlight filtered through the pines, the air smelled like warm dirt, and for the first time the land felt like mine again. Not contested, not questioned, not part of someone's fantasy playground. Just mine. I could have let the clearing grow wild. I could have planted grass. Hell, I could have left it alone. But every time I looked at that empty space, it felt unfinished, like a story missing its final line. So I called Travis. 3 days later, he poured a new concrete pad in the exact footprint of the old pavilion. Not big, not flashy, just perfectly deliberate. Then we bolted a custom steel sign into the center: "Private property not for hoe use, ever." And beneath it, in smaller print: "In memory of the most expensive shed in Cottonwood Ridge, $100,000." By sunset, neighbors were walking by snapping photos. By morning, it was on the neighborhood Facebook page. By lunch, memes were circulating, my favorite being one of Linda, photoshopped into a demolition derby helmet. I didn't ask for revenge, but I wasn't above enjoying it. Now when I stand at the edge of that clearing, I feel something rare and simple: peace. And maybe a little satisfaction knowing the next time the HOA thinks about expanding their empire, they'll remember the man who read the deed. If dar.ca wants, I'll now stitch all sections: hook plus antagonist intro plus background plus escalation plus climax plus resolution into one seamless 3,000 word script broken into clean parts.